Try laying a hand on her and see what happens. The voice came from the shadows of Pier 9, calm as low tide, steady as steel. A circle of dock managers froze. A woman in a navy blazer stood pinned against a cold shipping container, breath fogging in the harbor wind. "Please don't hit me," she whispered. Yellow sodium lights flickered. Waves struck the pilings like a drum. He stepped forward from the dark. Oil-stained coveralls, calloused hands, eyes that measured danger the way a sailor reads weather. "Walk away," he said. "Now." Her name later would matter, Amelia Hart, age 30. The public face of a billion-dollar logistics empire. His name would matter more, Jack Sullivan, age 37, former Navy, now a forklift driver pulling double shifts to raise his 9-year-old daughter. But in this breathless minute, there were only two truths. A contract on a clipboard, and a wool shawl hanging on a hook in a small apartment 3 blocks from the water, keeping memory warm until morning. What if the man the board called a nobody was the one person who would pull the company's rot into daylight and teach its heiress how to breathe again? Jack Sullivan was 37, though the lines carved deep around his eyes made him look older on certain mornings. Broad-shouldered from years at sea, his frame still carried the discipline of the Navy, but his life now belonged to the docks. He drove forklifts, loaded cargo, and pushed through night shifts most men half his age couldn't endure. Yet when the siren ended his shift and he stepped into his 2-bedroom apartment by the canal, he was not a dock worker. He was a father. The apartment was simple worn linoleum second-hand furniture, the faint scent of soap and oatmeal. But on the walls, taped in uneven rows, were colored drawings. Paper boats drifting on blue rivers, stick figures holding hands, suns with crooked rays. Each drawing carried one word in crayon: hope. His daughter Emily, 9 years old with golden hair that caught every bit of sunlight, believed hope could float. She folded paper boats every night and sent them downstream whispering, "Someday, Daddy, my boats will reach the ocean." The wool shawl hanging by the door belonged to his late wife, Sarah. She had died 3 winters earlier after a sudden illness that left Jack holding their daughter close and wondering how one man was supposed to be both anchor and sail. He never took the shawl down. Sometimes when Emily had nightmares, he draped it across her shoulders and told her, "Your mother is still here keeping us warm." Other nights he touched it himself, not for comfort, but as a promise he would not let grief turn their lives into ashes. Jack's world was measured in ordinary rituals, walking Emily to school before dawn, clapping loudly at her piano recitals, packing her lunch with an extra smiley face sticker just to hear her laugh. To Emily, her father was a superhero. To the men at the harbor, he was just another worker with worn boots and oil-stained hands. He liked it that way. Visibility drew attention, and attention at the harbor rarely meant safety. But destiny does not leave invisible men untouched. That night at Pier 9, when he heard a woman cry out, "Please don't hit me," Jack moved before he thought. It was instinct, the same instinct that had once saved fellow sailors in burning corridors at sea. Protect the vulnerable. Stand tall even when no one else will. He never expected the woman he shielded would carry a name recognized in every boardroom in the state. Amelia Hart. To him, she was simply someone afraid. To her, he was the man who stepped out of the shadows when no one else dared. Amelia Hart was 30 years old, but the world had never allowed her to feel young. Her grandfather had built Hart Global from the bones of shipping lanes and railroads. Her father had expanded it with ruthless precision, crushing competitors and buying silence where needed. Amelia was the heir, the figurehead, the polished face on magazine covers. At 30, she had signed contracts worth more than entire towns would see in a lifetime. On paper, her life gleamed. She lived in a penthouse overlooking the harbor, walls of glass framing the skyline like a painting only the wealthy could afford. Her shoes were imported leather, her schedule filled with gala dinners where crystal glasses clinked and chandeliers dripped gold. In her world, deals were signed with smiles sharper than knives, and loyalty was measured in profit margins. But privilege came with shackles. Amelia's father, Edward Hart, demanded perfection. He taught her early that vulnerability was weakness, and weakness was unforgivable. Power doesn't cry, he would say, staring over his half-moon glasses. And if it does so behind locked doors. Amelia learned to smile on cue, to nod in meetings, to speak with the calm of a fortress. Behind that fortress, though, was a woman cracking. For months she had suspected fraud within the harbor management, unaccounted cargo missing shipments, signatures forged in her name. When she raised questions, her father brushed them aside. "It's business," he said. "Don't look too closely. Your role is to sign, not to question." But Amelia did question. And when she followed the paper trail down to the harbor itself, she discovered the rot went deeper than she imagined. Managers pocketing money. Ships rerouted to shadow accounts. Her own family's name being used to launder smuggling profits. The night she was cornered against a steel container clipboard shoved at her chest, threats hissed into her ear, she realized the danger wasn't just corporate. It was personal. To the men at the harbor, Amelia was a pawn. To her father, she was an instrument. To the press, she was an Ice Queen CEO who dined under chandeliers. No one saw her as human. No one until Jack Sullivan stepped out of the dark, his voice steady as the tide, and told her tormentors to back away. In that instant, her world of glass towers collided with his world of steel docks. The empire she inherited was built on secrets and silence. The life he carried was built on scars and promises. The contrast was so sharp it almost hurt to look at. And yet, for the first time in years, Amelia felt something she could not define. Safety. The Montclair Harbor offices glowed with sterile fluorescent light, their glass walls hiding the rot beneath. Amelia Hart sat across from Victor Kane, her family's oldest ally turned enforcer. Victor was the kind of man who wore silk ties but kept brass knuckles in his desk drawer. His smile never reached his eyes. "Sign the contract," he said smoothly, pushing a folder across the table. "Transfer oversight of Pier 9. It's routine." Amelia glanced at the pages. Routine. It was a cover-up, false numbers, missing containers, forged authorizations. Her pulse hammered. "I won't sign lies," she answered quietly. Victor's laugh was soft and cruel. "Your father expects you to. He built this empire. Are you prepared to tear it down?" Around the room, the other managers shifted. Men twice her age, each looking at her as if she were a spoiled child playing dress-up in a CEO's chair. One muttered, "She doesn't understand business." Another, "She'll learn fear." Amelia steadied her voice. "I understand enough. Fraud is fraud, and I won't put my name on it." The air thickened. Victor leaned forward, voice dropping into venom. "Do you think the press will praise you? No. They'll say the Ice Queen cracked, that you lost control, that your empire fell because you were weak." His words sliced at wounds carved long ago by her father. Weak, cracked, unfit. She clenched her fists under the table. Then Victor pulled out the final weapon, a photograph. He tossed it onto the folder. Amelia froze. It was Jack Sullivan, her unlikely rescuer, standing in his oil-stained coveralls, Emily tugging at his hand, a wool shawl hanging behind them. Victor's smirk widened. "Interesting company you've been keeping. A dockhand, a nobody, the kind of man who scrubs our ships while we dine. Imagine tomorrow's headlines, Amelia Hart, billion-dollar heiress consorting with a common laborer. You'll be a joke." The room fell silent. Amelia's throat tightened, shame burning like acid. But before she could speak, the door opened. Jack himself stood there, summoned to polish glasses for the evening board dinner. He paused, sensing the tension, his jaw tightening when he saw Amelia's pale face and the photo spread on the table. Victor turned, mockery dripping from his tone. "Ah, the invisible man arrives. Tell me, Sullivan, do you enjoy the company of your betters, or do you prefer the shadows where you belong?" Jack's eyes flicked to Amelia, then to the photo, then back to Victor. His voice was steady quiet, but it carried weight. Everyone belongs where they stand up for what's right. The managers laughed. One said, "A janitor preaching about right and wrong." Another sneered, "Should we let him sign the contracts too?" Victor leaned back, savoring the humiliation. "Amelia, this is the man you want beside you, a laborer drowning in debts, a widower who can't keep his own life clean. Choose. Sign the papers or tie your future to his and watch your empire sink." The table stilled. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. And for a moment, Amelia's world held its breath. Amelia's fingers trembled above the folder. Her father's empire pressed against her shoulders like iron. Around her, men smirked, already convinced she would fold. But then one detail on the photograph caught her eye. The wool shawl, worn gray, its edges frayed with age. Her heart skipped. She knew that shawl. Years ago, as a girl sneaking through her father's offices, Amelia had seen a young assistant wearing it, a woman named Margaret Sullivan. She remembered her warmth, her laughter, the way she once knelt to pick up Amelia's dropped pencil when no one else noticed. One winter afternoon, Margaret had draped that same shawl across Amelia's shoulders when she was shivering near the drafty window. And then suddenly, Margaret was gone. Her resignation had been whispered about. Rumors of conflict with Mr. Hart. Amelia had asked once. Her father's reply had been sharp as a blade. "Some people don't belong in our world. Forget her." But Amelia had never forgotten. And now the shawl in the photo told her that Margaret was Jack Sullivan's late wife. Her voice shook as she lifted the picture. "Where did you get this?" Victor smirked. "Company archives. Public records. Your savior has a history, Amelia. His wife once worked for Hart Global. She left in disgrace." Jack's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened. "Don't drag her name into this!" But Amelia pressed forward, her heart pounding. "Margaret was your wife." Jack met her eyes. Pain and pride battled across his face. Finally, he nodded. "She was. And she carried scars your family gave her. She never told me everything, only that she refused to raise our daughter in a world that devours kindness." His voice broke slightly. "She left your empire to protect Emily." The room fell silent. For the first time, Amelia's mask cracked in front of her board. Tears welled. Her childhood memories of Margaret, the gentlewoman with the gray shawl, collided with the truth her family had crushed her, discarded her, left her to struggle while they grew richer. Victor leaned back, savoring the chaos. "So you see, Amelia, you've entangled yourself with ghosts from your own family's sins. You think you can build trust on that foundation?" Jack's voice rose not loud, but steady, unflinching. "The foundation of trust is truth, and tonight the truth is standing in front of you." Amelia's chest heaved. Betrayal, guilt, recognition, it all flooded her at once. She whispered almost to herself, "All my life I was told family was loyalty. But maybe family was suffering in silence while they built their empire on broken backs." The managers shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, some looked less certain. Victor snapped, "Don't be foolish, Amelia. Sign the papers and put this mess behind you." But Amelia lifted the photograph, her hand shaking but resolute. "No, this mess is the truth. And I won't sign away my soul to keep it hidden." Jack's eyes met hers, and in that moment, amid shame, revelation, and grief, they both knew the past was no longer buried. It was here, demanding to be faced. The boardroom's air grew heavy, as if the very chandeliers strained under the weight of secrets too long ignored. Amelia stood at the head of the table, the photograph trembling in her hand. Jack remained by the door, his stance calm, but ready like a sailor bracing against storm waves. Victor Kane's smirk widened. "You think truth will save you, Amelia? Let me show you what truth really looks like." He snapped his fingers. An assistant rushed forward carrying a thick leather folder. Inside were pages Amelia had never seen: confidential memos, resignation letters, sealed testimonies. Victor pulled out one and tossed it across the table. Amelia bent to read. Her throat tightened. It was a letter from Margaret Sullivan written in careful script. "I leave not because I lack strength, but because this company devours kindness, and I will not raise my child inside its jaws." Her vision blurred with tears. She remembered Margaret's gentle hand fixing her collar, her warm laugh echoing in a cold marble hallway. All this time, Amelia had thought she'd been alone in her silent rebellion against her father's empire. But Margaret had fought too and had been destroyed for it. Victor's voice cut in sharp as a blade. "Do you see now your savior is nothing but a relic of your family's disgrace? His wife ran from us. He hides behind janitor's work. And you, his finger, jabbed the air you're ready to throw away your inheritance for him," the men around the table murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uneasy. Amelia's voice cracked, but she forced the words out. Maybe Margaret wasn't the one disgraced. Maybe it was all of us who let my father destroy good people to keep power intact. The silence broke when a small voice pierced the tension. Nora, Jack's daughter, had slipped quietly into the room, clutching one of her folded paper boats. Her eyes, wide and fearless, met Amelia's. "My mom said hope floats, even when everything else sinks." She placed the boat on the polished table right on top of the contracts. Gasps rippled through the room. Victor hissed, "Get that child out of here!" But Jack moved before anyone else could, standing protectively between his daughter and the board. His voice was low, but it carried like thunder. "You can threaten me. You can drag my wife's memory through the mud. But you do not touch my daughter." Something shifted in that moment. The sight of a man worn from labor shielding his child with nothing but his body pierced deeper than any contract or ledger. Even hardened executives turned their eyes away. Amelia stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice gaining strength. "You call him weak because he scrubs your floors. But tonight when you tried to break me, he stood tall while the rest of you sat silent. That's what real strength looks like. And if my empire cannot recognize it, then it is not worth saving." Victor's face turned crimson. "You'll regret this, Amelia. You'll regret turning your back on us." Jack reached for her hand, hesitant, steady. Regret is living with lies. Standing in truth is the only way forward. For the first time, Amelia clasped his hand in front of everyone. Her tears spilled freely, but she did not hide them. "Then I choose truth. I choose the man who saved me once, and keeps saving me every day." The room erupted not in laughter, but in whispers. Phones, snapping photos, history being written in real time. Victor's grip on power cracked. He stormed out vowing revenge, but no one followed him. Jack, Amelia, and Nora stood together beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, three figures bound by lost courage and the possibility of something greater. And as the paper boat floated in a glass of water at the center of the table, the board realized the tide had turned. The boardroom was left in shambles. Papers, scattered contracts, unsigned silence where power once dictated every breath. Amelia, Jack, and little Nora walked out together into the night air. The harbor wind smelled of salt and rust, but also of something cleaner, something new. Later that week, Amelia's world shifted again. The headlines screamed, "Heiress defies her own family." Some mocked her, some praised her. Investors called her reckless. Harbor workers called her brave. But Amelia didn't care. For the first time, she was breathing her own air, not the stale air of her father's empire. One evening, in Jack's modest apartment, Nora pressed a new drawing onto the fridge. It showed three people standing on a dock beneath a rising sun. Above their heads, written in shaky but hopeful letters, "This is my family." Amelia touched the picture, her throat tight. She whispered, "If you both still need me, I don't want to leave." Jack didn't answer with speeches. He simply handed her a bamboo stick for Nora's paper boats. Then stay, on time. The three of them sat on the balcony that night, folding boats and letting them drift into the dark water. The wool shawl still hung by the door, but now it was not just a memory of loss, it was a blessing on what they were building together. Morning light spilled through the small kitchen, warm and ordinary. Not marble floors, not chandeliers, just chipped mugs, a child's laughter, and a sense of belonging money had never been able to buy. And so I'll leave you with this question. In the end, is family the one you are born into, or the one you choose to protect day after day until it grows strong enough to float?